Hi YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and this is Outsiders, and today I'm going to be covering a question off by a gentleman called 3131771. Now that got me thinking straight away. His name's Evan, by the way. I thought, wow, that's a great number, that. I love that title. So I got digging. I thought, oh, this guy's a bit cagey. So I had a look on his website and it was all legitimate. But why would somebody choose 3131771? And I'll tell you why this is. It's really interesting. I love symbolism. I use it a lot in my games, actually. Anything that can provoke the players to be thinking, God, this bloke's name gave me some heebie-jeebies. I thought this guy was really clever. So, Evan, well done on the numbers. I absolutely love that number sequence, okay? And I believe that you've chosen it for a reason. And I'd be pretty shocked if you haven't. So I have in my own mind worked out why you've chosen that number sequence and what it means, I think. And I'm going to keep that to myself for the moment. Anybody can work it out. Send a response also to this. Just send a comment through if you think you know why it's important. But Evan, it's a brilliant name. I love it. Anyway, obviously as a DM, it's one of those things. I love numbers. Love anything that's you can hide, and numbers do that beautifully. Anyway, Evan gave me two great questions. In fact, it's three questions really, and I want to try and cover them off. The first one is about courtship, relationships, marriage, sex in RPGs. He's working on a current campaign. He would like to marry his characters off at some point for political, economical reasons, which is a great point in itself, Evan. So I was wondering what your thoughts on courtship, relationship, marriage, or sex in RPGs, since typically this is a male-dominated hobby. Yeah, it is exactly as you go on to explain. It is very difficult for male-dominated players to get into either A, play female characters properly, which I think, if I'm being honest, and this is my honest view on it, and maybe you've got some examples of really good play out there. But in 25 plus years of play, only a couple of people have ever managed to portray a female character very well, and the rest, to be honest with, has been a pretty poor effort. Only females really can play females, and males can play males well. And it's a very difficult thing to cross over. Now, if you want to test your role-play skill as a player, certainly that's the way to go. As a DM, it is difficult to do, but some of my best NPCs are female characters, and as most of the players will tell you, have been nemesises of the group a great deal, which is good in one way and bad in another. And I've had to change my philosophy and thinking on this quite a lot, Evans, because I realised that my players were getting quite paranoid about meeting any female characters, to the degree where I thought, oh God, how am I going to create these relationships, these courtships, exactly as you say, how do I create these sort of, the sexual tension that's so critical to a good story? Because you can have the best story in the world, but without the ties that bind, it really means nothing. So I thought to myself, I've got to make sure, and it's a great tip for any DM out there, that I make sure that the next campaign I bring together, that as soon as the players get, someone who's going to be their patron or something along those lines, it's a female character, and they are rock solid throughout the entire campaign, and it gives me an opportunity then to try and build in a relationship between them and one of the other characters. And it's worked on a number of occasions now, and it really, really works. But you've got to, relationships were built over time, like they are in real life. Obviously, it's a fantasy game, it's a lot quicker, but the reality, it must be built over time, otherwise it's not meaningful. And yeah, if you're a young gamer or a young DM out there, it's very, very easy to sort of snigger at the relationship side and really not pay much attention and actually laugh about it. And that's fine, we've all been there. But if you really want your games to reach another level, you've got to get behind it and really understand that it's not smutty or stupid. It's really critical to a good game. So, and he's right, Evan is right when he uses the words, and I think they're very well chosen, for political reasons or economical reasons. Bang on, Evan. Absolutely. Marriages aren't always just marriages because of love. They're marriages for convenience, and that makes a great story. And you've got to use that in your game. So, Evan, great point. So I hope that covers it, really. Try to think of it, if you're an inexperienced DM, get behind the relationship side of your game. Try to put that effort into those characters. Think it in terms of when you're portraying the female NPCs. Be a little bit more... Try and be honest. Yeah? Try and think of it in terms of what you've seen in films, books and everything else. Slow, build, nice, lower the voice, try to get into the character. Try to be more devious if you have to, but really, really work behind the scenes to make those relationships work. And really try at them, because they are so important, and it's a great question. Okay, second question. The first part of this, he says, so how do you bring groups together? The origins of a group. How do you bring it together rather than we're in a tavern and we're all going off to do an adventure type game? Yeah, well, this just needs a bit of thought on the DM's part. There are many, many ways to successfully do it. You could, for example, here's a few things that I've done in the past. You could have a vested reason for the players to work together because of what's happened in a town or a city. It's affected them all individually and it brings them together. They've all got a vested reason. But sometimes it can be more obscure, so you can have things like they've each got a particular tattoo and they are brought, they were orphan children or whatever, they were brought together under the banner of one old wise veteran Nirel who brings them together and schools them each individually, paying for their tutorage, to the point comes where he explains to them about their prophecy or their destiny. All of them are great. There's nothing wrong with that, Or I did one where the character, I started with one character, and it was a Warhammer game, and he was attacked. He was doing his normal day job, and he was attacked, randomly attacked. And in fighting off his attacker, he sliced off his backpack that the attacker was wearing. The attacker got away, and in the backpack he found information on 4 other people, as well as himself. Detailed information about where they were last seen, what they last did, that sort of thing. And so he followed up on that information, and as he found the next person, it was a question: did he get there before the next attack? And the next person he found was one of the players. That was brilliant. They all had a vested reason to find out who was behind all these attacks and why, and that was great. So it's whatever you can come up with that isn't tad conjecture. I've done ones where you can have players that are shipwrecked. I've done one where they were shipwrecked and recovered off a coastline, and there was a large city nearby. The city's cut off from the rest of the world for 2/3 of the year. It's iced in. They were brought. They were basically kept alive by a benefactor who was obviously clearly some master thief who got them working for his guild, and they were working within the city doing various jobs for him. What else could they do? They certainly couldn't. They couldn't turn on their benefactor because they didn't know how powerful he was, and to be honest with you, they would have probably been killed. So it was a really good story because at the same token they were doing jobs they didn't really want to do them, but they didn't feel they had any choice. So it's those sort of things that you look at, and I hope that answers it. Think about the unusual, or the unobvious is far better than the usual. And the second part of your question is, what do you do when you have multiple PC devs, like in games like Paranoia, Call of Cthulhu, where eventually the lineup of the original group is all but gone? What do you do at that point? Well, fortunately, to be honest with you, Evan, I don't think, campaigns, once you lose all the core characters, the campaign really does tend to generally run out of steam. There isn't that impetus that the second generation characters have for joining. It's, if you have a total party kill and then you start somewhere else within the story arc, the players may not know that it's the same story because you might have done it in a very clever way. So that's okay. If you get a partial party kill, I think is where you're going, and then you've only got 1 or 2 characters left. Campaigns can run out of steam, and as a DM, you've got to realise when to draw a line on it and say, okay, guys, that campaign now runs to an end because of what's happened. There's nothing wrong in that. There's no point continuing to flog a dead horse to its conclusion, because as a DM, you burn up out of ideas, and as a group of players, they get a bit bored of it as well. So keeping it fresh is critically important. So a lot of the players I deal with are very, very good players now. And, they'll be the first to sort of realise that they're not going to bring back the same character. Because in groups, you want to feel a niche, don't you? I mean, I think most groups want to feel a niche. And no matter what anybody says, unfortunately, for games to really, really work, there is unfortunately a bit of a balance thing. Because as soon as it isn't balanced, and you've got too many of one character, group or class, the problem is that you then have to adjust your campaigns quite dramatically. Not a problem for an experienced DM, but quite tricky for inexperienced DMs. So, yeah, I see your question, and I hope I'm answering it in the right way, that the bottom line is, sometimes when the balance is lost and the original character's gone, it's better to bring it to a close and start something up afresh. It's better for you as a DM, it's better for you as players. So, anyway, I hope that's covered off your questions in the 10 minutes. I've been Sean Connors. This has been Outsiders. Till the next time, happy gaming and take care of yourselves.